what are the benefits of ADHD medication? Well, the benefits are that it can help people engage with tasks, help people focus, to stay on track, to stay engaged with something that otherwise they might be not wanting to, or be very disengaged, or find it hard to sit still. So there's a few things going on there. Why can it help someone engage? Well, a lot of ADHD people, they have physical restlessness. It's very difficult for them to sit still, very difficult for us to sit still, I mean. Um, and that's often due to something we call proprioception, or a proprioceptive need. So proprioception is one of our senses. It's our sense of our muscles. It's our body parts in space around us. So for an HD person, you need a lot of proprioceptive input. You need a lot of feedback from the body, and you can get that by going to the gym. Sure, by running around, by jumping, by bouncing, by having deep pressure on the body, massages, rough and tumble play, lifting, carrying objects. There's so many ways that you can meet that proprioceptive need. But by meeting that need, ADHD people feel more relaxed, they feel calmer, and things like anxiety can actually massively reduce, because anxiety is often physical restlessness. We feel it as physical restlessness, or our physical restlessness gets misinterpreted for anxiety. And the good thing about a lot of those proprioceptive activities is you can meet them preemptively. Like, you could do exercise in the morning and it helps you sit down and feel less restless and anxious the rest of the day. When you feel that restlessness, you might be impulsive. You're going to have a hard time sitting down engaging with a task. So that's a big thing that helps. Other things that make it more difficult for us to sit and engage with a task are what we call our executive functions. So this is how the brain processes and manages information. So in HD people, you might often hear that we're told we have reduced or executive dysfunction, reduced ability, reduced working memory. Our hindsight isn't as good, our foresight isn't as good. All these really negative phrasings, but it's not negative, it's not something reduced, it's difference. So that reduced working memory is one of our executive functions. It's what allows us to hold things in our mind very temporarily. So you give me a phone number and I'm repeating that in my head. That memory, that repetition that I'm going on, repeating that number, that's my working memory. HD people, it's shorter, that working memory. So you can't hold as much in it. Things fly out. You forget what you're talking about. You forget what someone said to you. You forget the task you're doing. You walk to a different room and you've forgotten why you're going to the room. Stuff like that. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Sounds like a disadvantage. But actually what it means as a result is HD people have to find ways of chunking information together in their mind, of forming mental connections to allow them to remember things, to hold things in their mind. Or it can also mean that they do jump around more conversationally, which could be more creative, it could be more extravagant, exciting, interesting. They can jump from topic to topic. If they start a task, it may mean that they find points of view that other people didn't think of, because their mind's jumping around finding connections. When it comes to creativity, it may mean that we are more creative because we're drawing on more different sources in our mind, because it's hard to hold one in, or it's harder to build that one. Instead, we're incorporating lots of different elements. So whereas first I said a reduced working memory, a disadvantage, you can't remember what you're talking about, you forget what you're doing here, actually it's got its big advantages, and it can add flavor to conversation, and it can add interest and insight to everyday tasks and work. What ADHD medication does is it makes, we've talked about people being less restless, but it also helps them sit down and focus, and as a result, often well, it definitely appears that way. I don't know what the evidence says about that working memory feels, bigger. You can store more in mind. You're more focused on the task. Thus, what you're thinking about generally seems to stick around more. But so ADHD meds can really help with that. ADHD meds also generally, they reduce someone's emotional affect. So that's those emotional highs. So they make people more level. Of course, if someone was taking too much medication, perhaps that would level them too much. That's a negative thing. But a good amount of medication, whatever that means for you, can mean somebody is potentially calmer, or maybe they struggle less with certain emotional situations or being overwhelmed. So we can already see here that there's actually many advantages to ADHD medication, probably half a dozen that I'm not even talking about. There are disadvantages to it as well. I've talked about them in a few of my other videos.